My name's Matthew Gray, and since 2001, I've been the front man for a project called, very near and dear to my heart, called Matthew in the Arrogant Sea.
Since when? What was that year?
Since 2001.
Okay, impressive.
Yeah. So 23 years now. It's been it's been a wonderful journey with this band. I've had a number of lineups, a number of releases. I mean, shoot, I couldn't tell you exactly how many records we've dropped, just since some of our releases predate, obviously Spotify and all of that stuff. Sure. So it would have been more of a cassette release or a CD release. Or not even, like, there are some labels where it was just a very low number release. And so they're out of print now.
Yep, I can relate to that.
So yeah, we've been going a long time. Denton based, love Denton with all of my heart. I've been in Denton for well over 20 years now. But yeah, Matthew and the Arrogant Sea.
How has the Denton scene changed for you guys since 2001?
I mean, I've seen the Denton music scene go through a lot of rotations, a lot of changes, not just from the local music community within bands, but also promoters and everything in between. And so I feel like it's changed, but it still maintains its magic, its electricity. Like, I've always felt like that Denton was likened to the way Bob Dylan wrote about New Orleans. Like, there's an electricity in the air.
Sure.
There's something special. There's magic coming out of all the odd corners of the square and everything beyond it as well. So I feel like it's changed, but it's evolved in some really positive ways as well.
How did you meet Grady?
So would have been through playing shows. Actually, it's a funny story. One of my very first Denton shows, because when I first moved to Texas, I was more Fort Worth based.
Okay.
I didn't officially move to Denton until, I think it would have been 2004 officially. But that's really when I started touring more. It would have been 2004 to beyond. But I met Grady. We played this show. I had met Ryan Becker, actually. Mm-hmm. We had played a show in Fort Worth. Oh my goodness, at this club that's no longer there, of course. But we'd hit it off really well, played another show, like a coffee house show type thing. He suggested we go play this place called Rick's.
Yep.
And that was the first time I played Rick's. There was nobody there. It was just RTB. No,
even still a thing?
No, not at all. Not at all.
We played there a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah. And then it became like the Drink or something silly like that.
Didn't it like burn down multiple times? Yes.
I believe so. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. But that's how I had the pleasure of meeting Grady. Would have been that first show. Uh-huh. And then obviously we played a multitude of shows together and collaborated in a number of ways over the years.
Nice. So, Very cool. What's on your mind? What you got going over there? Have we hit the 5-minute mark? Am I safe? You just got bleed.
Where does the name come from?
So the name Matt, it's a really interesting story. I was in New York City a long time ago and was going through, like, kind of rummaging through this flea market. I found this very random box of books, and there was this book of sailors' poems.
Okay.
And at that time, I had just finished working with a band that I had called the Patty Patty Shake, which would have been in the 90s, probably 96 to 99 kind of thing.
Okay.
And we were based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma at that time. I was kind of working with that project. It had just come to an end. I wanted something of my own, or that it felt like my own. And I just started randomly rummaging through this book of sailors' poems, and there was one titled The Arrogant Sea.
I love it.
And so it just I instantly connected with
Instantly made it yours.
Instantly made it mine, yeah. And to this day, people have misspelled it, questioned it, the works. But, I always love it because I feel like it stands out. It is something of a unique name, and
I haven't forgotten it since I learned it. That's a good sign.
That's a great sign, yeah.
Not to be confused with the Arrogant Sea.
That's right.
Or sea, your way.
Yeah. I've heard that one, yeah.
Oh, yeah. What's a pirate's favorite letter?
Yeah. R.
No, matey, it be the sea.
I feel like, to be fair, there are 2 punchlines to that joke. It could be R.
It is R.
It's just as funny.
That's the bait, right? Is that people are likely to say R, so you get to correct them.
Fair.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's a dad joke.
It's a
I may steal that,
Yeah, you're welcome to it. I didn't write it.
It's a good gotcha joke. I have notes. I've never used them before.
Ooh.
This is a first for me.
Okay,
Can we get a close-up on this? Can you zoom in?
in post.
Yeah.
That's right. It's not the same. It's not the same. So you guys are working on a new album, EP,
Yes.
or full album?
A new full album. We released a record called If You Find Yourself Floating Away last November.
Okay.
It's done very well for us. Had just a wonderful time promoting that. And almost immediately after finishing that one, we were halfway through with the follow-up to it.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah. It was a really good feeling. Like, I love it when you're in that position. But this new record is called Anomaly I. And I feel like I wouldn't say it's a departure from what people are used to with Mattis, as we like to call it. But it's definitely like a bit of a growth beyond the floating record. And I feel like it ties in really well with what we like to do sonically.
Do you guys, intentionally change your sound or change your approach from album to album, or does that kind of just naturally happen with your writing?
I feel like, in a sense of when it comes to the writing, like the story, the content, like all of that, yes. In regards to like approaching the recording, we kind of do what feels instinctually the most comfortable.
Sure.
So every record is a little different, for sure, but for the most part, we like to track our stuff live and get less of a boxed recording feeling and more of a song or a record that breathes a little more, where you can feel the elements, a little bit of the space, and, kind of get an idea of what we were feeling in that moment. Or that's how I've always kind of viewed it.
Are you doing it? Are you recording it exclusively in that live take, or are you starting with a live take and then adding to overdubbing?
Normally, we'll start with a live take and then overdub to it.
I love that. I love that approach.
Yeah, but sometimes, we'll just turn on a click and write something also. Yep. And that happened a lot on the floating record, where it was a little more precise. We really wanted it to still have the live band feeling, but we wanted it to also feel a little bit more sketched out at times, because I feel like it's a darker or moodier record for us than what our followers are typically used to.
Okay.
I mean, how would you describe your sound?
That's a wonderful question. I feel like record to record, it really does vary. I've always kind of seen us I feel like we fall into the indie rock box, whatever that massive box is labeled or looks like. It varies from band to band.
Yeah, it really does.
It really does. But I would say that our sound, it's always has soulful elements. There's always elements of pop in there. There's a lot of indie rock moments. And we also have those elements where we kind of like to jam things out a little bit more than I feel like some bands are comfortable in indie rock today.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of all over the place in this wonderful way that's kind of tied together with soulful melodies and harmonies. And we've really worked, I feel like we went from writing really deeply vague songs, like songs that were it felt like it was about aliens or otherworldly presence. I mean, that was our national debut, and it did really well for us. But as we've grown, I've wanted it to be less vague and really start to talk more about, the story, the character, the narrative, whatever it may be. I want it to be a little more heartfelt, a little more in your face, while being very sincere. So without really answering your question, I feel like I answered your question.
Excellent answer. Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's a temporal aspect there too, right? As the band evolves and as your sound evolves. I noticed in some of the research that we did, that there was kind of a pandemic time shift in what you were doing musically. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. No, actually, during the pandemic, we were all, obviously, the whole world was shut down. There was just so much changing, and music changed completely. And, as artists, you have to just instantly pivot. You have to be all right, we have to pivot to what's safe. We have to pivot to what makes sense, while not really pulling away from what we want to say. And during that time, we had released a series of singles that did very well for us, where they were all recorded remotely, which was new for all of us, right? I've done remote collaborations most of my career from friends all over the globe, and that's awesome. I'm blessed to be able to do that. But in this instance, we really had to kind of work with the right producer, work with the right people so that we could put this together. But we ended up releasing Motional during the pandemic, and that one did very well for us. It's still a favorite at KXT, which we're very grateful for. as well as a song called DFK, which was something I kind of wrote about, watching the tide change during a fire, which I liken similar to a lot of what was going on in the world at that time. So I kind of wrote a story about the mini mall number 2, I believe it was, or one of the mini malls burning down on the square.
Oh, yeah.
And then we released a song called Hit Me Up, Hard Times as well.
Okay.
And all of those were done remotely in some form or fashion in different studios or home studios or whatever we could do. I mean, there's pictures of us all throughout that time at Redwood in Denton, actually masked up and individually tracking and doing whatever we had to do. Because, we're all, I don't like to think of any of us really as musicians.
Okay.
I feel like it's a collective of artists.
Oh, sure.
We all have big visions and big ideas, and we're working towards a goal every single time we're together.
That's good. I love that. Yeah.
So it's, working during that time together, it was definitely a challenge, but it was a very rewarding one for us. And, I'm grateful that I'm playing with the guys that I do, because we all are very like-minded in that sense of like, all right, well, we still got to get back to work,
So the guys that you're currently playing with, how long have you been playing with that lineup?
So everyone varies a little bit different. Blake and I, my bass player, we've been together for 13, 14 years now.
Okay.
Same as Tony, one of my guitar players. Hagen, I believe he's been with the group for over 5 years now, something like that. And I'm terrible with my timing, unless I'm looking at my notes, but I love them all to death. And Pablo's been with us for a couple of years now.
And he plays
guitar as well. Yeah. So two guitarists, bass, drums, and vocals.
So that puts you at what, a five count?
A five piece, yeah. And that we like to mix that up too. Like we've been known for doing it for years, where
guests and stuff.
Oh yeah. Where we'll bring in like all of our friends from the DSO or the Irving Symphony Orchestra or whomever.
That's fun.
And just have a really special show, one night only. And
cool.
That's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So I feel like the lineup is always ever evolving and ever changing. But yeah, I'm very grateful for the guys, the band family, if you will.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the studio situation. When it's not a pandemic situation, do you guys do home recording studios, or do you book time and go into
typically
a bigger
book time and go into the studio? We love working in Redwood, just because it's around the corner from my house. It's very close. It's very centrally located in Denton. And, it's a Grammy Award-winning studio, and Mackenzie Smith and everyone involved is just incredible. So we're really grateful for the opportunity to continue to get to work there.
I have a new appreciation for bands that go into studios to record their projects because, I don't know, there's this thing that happens with home recordings, self-recordings, where you tend to spend too much time on a song. And when you go into a studio situation, I feel like it kind of forces you to focus in and get it done.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. I'm absolutely not opposed, and I have done home recordings, many over the years. And I started, recording in my parents' attic.
Sure.
But, for the most part, we like to go into a studio because we all feel like, exactly like you said, we're working on something. The goal is to finish it, versus if I'm working on something at home, I'm always going to find a reason to redo something or refit or adjust something, or that vocal line wasn't perfect. When in reality, I don't want a perfect vocal line.
Right.
I want something with character. I want something that speaks to the listener, but also speaks to my soul in regards to what I'm trying to translate.
Totally.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like working in a studio, I agree. It's definitely work. It's definitely work, it's definitely time consuming, but that's what we do as artists. I feel, we're compelled to be in those environments.
Is the new album complete, or are you still recording it?
It's almost there. I'd say we're probably 90% done with it.
When are you planning on releasing it? Do you have a date?
We don't have an official date yet, but I'd love to have it out this spring. So we'll at least have a single out before the end of the year, just to start teasing the Anomaly record, but I'm hoping by spring.
Cool. I love that. So you guys are playing Dosed?
Dosed, yes.
Today,
yes.
You said
it's dosed.
Dosed.
Mm-hmm.
Not dozed.
Yeah. Okay,
Dosed.
cool.
Which is very different.
Yes.
But can be confusing. I understand, yeah.
It depends on the dose.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Tell me about that song. Is there a unique story about it, or is it just simply a good song?
I would say I mean, I like to think that there is a story behind every song we
love
put
it.
on our records, just because I am a storyteller and I live my life like it is this journey. And every day there's a new story is unfolding, a new chapter is coming to life.
Yeah.
So with Dosed, it really is, or I like to think of it as the story of Matthew and Arrogancy.
Okay, I love that.
And it's a song that I wrote years ago.
Okay.
But I could never quite find a home for it.
Lyrically or music, you wrote the entire thing years ago? Okay,
Years ago, yeah, years ago. And we had been playing it off and on from time to time live when it was the right setting. Because I like to do that with our songs. I like to try out the new ones on stages just to make sure instinctually it feels right.
Yeah,
you know, because that's such a weird juxtaposition from studio to stage,
Yeah.
as you know.
Yep.
But really, I wrote that song about the story and the history of Matthew and Arrogancy. Like from the opening lyric to the very last moment of the song, it really ties into how I feel the band has evolved over the years. You know, the very first line is, "I dosed on a pancake and landed here." And the funny story about that was my very first popular single would have been 2004, probably, something like that.
Okay.
It was a song called Pancakes on Mars.
All right.
And it was a very silly, like very Brian Wilson, big vocals, big harmonies, lots of swelling noises and sounds around it.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a really fun thing for me to do at that time. And so I was like, I started writing Dosed at that time.
Okay.
And kind of left half of the song. Much like another song of mine, like every now and then I'll write a quarter of a song, which is rare. But when I do, I'll kind of keep it in my back pocket knowing that was meaningful.
Yeah.
Like what I wrote there, like that strikes me, but I don't know where it belongs yet. And so that's how it was with Dosed. I just kind of slowly wrote it over the years, and I would say probably 2012 would have been when it really came to life. Yeah, maybe 2013, but right in there.
I've had a couple of songs like that scare me. Like I've held on to them for so long that I'm just afraid to release them. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
I have those songs as well. You know, and like obviously we all do as artists, as songwriters, as musicians, as filmmakers, whatever it is, we always have something in our back pocket that we're proud of, but we're like, is it ready?
Yeah. Is
Is
the world
it
ready
there?
for this?
Yeah.
Am I ready for the world to
Yes.
have this? I think maybe is the better way.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, and it's cool to finally find a place for it.
Yeah.
right, and be able to put it on a record.
Absolutely, absolutely. And songs are a lot like children in that sense. I feel like they come at the appropriate time in your life, if that makes sense. You know, for those of you that have children, I don't. But I feel like I'd heard a friend of mine years ago say that his songs were like his children.
I've said that. Yeah. Plenty of times. Yeah.
And I was just like, that always kind of just resonated with me deeply. And I was like, that's very true. It's like they grow up and evolve as they are supposed to.
I've used that analogy many times. You know, you raise your song the best you can, and then at some point you just got to let it go into the world, and it's got its own legs. And
then sometimes they
chooses
never
its own
let you
path.
go. They just keep like you're staying in the set list.
exactly.
It's like, this is the popular one. Ah, yeah. But you know, or at least that's my mentality.
Totally. I feel like Ryan Becker talked about that a little bit in our first episode, where he was kind of referencing the song evolving over time and growing.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And that's what's fun about having songs in the set list that span the years of the band as well, because I have the distinct pleasure of getting to watch them grow legs.
Like a child.
Yeah. I get to watch them start to take their first steps and start to ride their bike, and whatever analogy you want to include in that.
Right.
So it's really, really humbling for me, because in my mind I'm like, well, this was a song from 2008. That's cool that we're still playing it, but I'm like, wait, what? It's taken on a new shape. It's taken on a new form, and they continue to do that, and it's really cool. It's really humbling to see your songs kind of grow legs, if you will, start to jump.
Yeah, totally.
It brought multiple conversations back in full circle that
know,
we've had over the past few days. Yeah.
Maybe one or two more quick questions and then
You got a
segue.
quick question? If it's a long question, you're going to blow it, Travis.
So tell me about aliens.
Oh man, we don't have enough time. Like,
We haven't touched on politics yet.
one of my favorite podcast stories that I like to tell. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. But since you said talk about aliens, I've got one for you. The story of Jim Sullivan. Are you guys familiar with Jim Sullivan?
I am not.
Most people aren't. It's
Okay.
one of my favorite stories to share. He's one of my favorite songwriters from the era. I believe it was the late 70s. But he released, he was known as Big Jim Sullivan in the 70s, right? He did a lot of stuff in Memphis, played a lot of like rock and roll, clunky guitar, very bluesy, very like kind of traditional bluesy. It was good, but it wasn't anything that you'd really write home about. And then one day he releases this record, and I'm kind of shortening the story a little bit, but he releases this record called UFO. And it was very psychedelic and very kind of Beach Boys meets blues rock. And it was very unique, very different. And blues rock may be the wrong genre to put it in, but since he came from that world, I'm liking it back. But he released this record called UFO. And then he went to, I believe it was Santa Rosa, New Mexico, to see a friend.
Okay.
Right? Stayed in a hotel, had a brand new 57, or a very new 57 Chevy, guitar in the back seat, suitcase full of cash, and like masters to his next record. And he disappeared off the face of the earth. Nobody to this day knows what happened to Jim Sullivan. And there's lots of theories out there. Even his wife, I mean, his label released years ago this little documentary. It's maybe like 10, 12 minutes on YouTube. I highly encourage you to check it out.
Okay.
About Jim Sullivan and this weird mystery that surrounds the end of his musical career where he just completely vanished out of thin air.
Did the aliens get his masters?
Good question. That's a very good question. I couldn't attest to that, but I've always found that story fascinating.
Yeah.
I've told it on a few podcasts over the years just because it is such a good story.
Yeah, it gives us something to look up tonight.
But I would highly encourage you to look up the story of Jim Sullivan.
Yeah, check out that.
Because it's a really fascinating one.
Expect a follow-up text from me with my
Okay.
with my takeaway on the story. Yeah.
Can't wait. Yeah.
Well, I would like to hear you guys play Dosed.
Let's do it.
Yeah?
That sounds great.
Head next door and do it.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Cool. Hell yeah.
Dosed on a pancake and landed here without a good leg to lean. All of my brothers have left me here, so I'm left with just memories. Moments in time, stars in your eyes. Why does this feel like a dream? Whoa. And I'm certain I'm not ready to die. So won't you remember my sunnier side? 'Cause I ain't never been no lucky guy. never been no lucky guy.